Hello, my name is Doug Lennick, and I welcome you to Smart Money Moves. Today, we're talking about taxes in retirement. Michael Kowalski, our senior director of our tax department, will be, and he does tax strategy, tax prep. They do it all. He's joining Adam Recker and myself. So, welcome, Michael. We appreciate you being here. I'm going to jump into it. This month, we're focusing on taxes. And I guess a question, I don't know which of you will want to answer it, maybe both, but why, as people get into retirement ages, why do taxes get more complex?
It's a great question, Doug. And I think there's a couple of different reasons for it, and some of it may even date back before just retirement. Oftentimes, when someone's working, they're thinking that retirement is going to be simple. You're no longer going to a 9 to 5 job. You don't have the same meetings that you did. You're going to take money out of your accounts and very simple. Unfortunately, for a lot of our clients, incomes become more complex as different income streams turn on in retirement. That could be Social Security, pension income, could be required distributions for our clients. When you're starting to take distributions from your accounts to live off of, there are capital gains that come into question. And so there's a lot of different new elements that come into focus, and they can complicate planning not just for the current year, but planning for other years down the road as well. In particular, when we start talking about required minimum distributions, a lot of our clients that are just retiring, thinking about the next couple of years, maybe they're 10 years away from required distribution starting or even further than that. Not something that is in the front of their mind at that moment of time.
Well, even that one, I just want to take a twist on required minimum distributions. I think there's a lot of confusion there, given people have retirement money in different accounts. How do they calculate it? Is it based on every company you have it with, or how does that work?
Great question. And generally, those required distributions are calculated based upon a life expectancy factor and the value of that account.
Okay.
And unfortunately, your life expectancy factor changes each year. So as you age, the IRS is going to want you to take more and more of that account out every single year. And what starts off fairly small, still punitive, but starts off fairly small, grows over time to make a very significant distribution as you get into the later years of your retirement. What we typically see happen, though, is that both of those elements, the value of the account and the life expectancy factor, play a key role in it. We typically see the markets appreciating over time, earning income for our clients. And as the value of the account goes up, combined with a shrinking life expectancy factor, you typically see required distributions escalate quite significantly over time, especially for our clients that have done a great job saving for their retirement.
Yeah, well, and it's interesting too, because here we have Adam, yourself, because both investments and tax strategy tend to matter then as you think about, as you're talking investments going up, so where you have your money and how that all makes a difference as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There are certain places where we want assets to be growing in the portfolio long term, and your funds might not start off in those ideal locations. And that's part of the tax strategy and investment strategy that we put together is making sure that while it might not be perfect at the onset, we want to eventually get those funds growing in the right place.
Now, how's 2026? I know there's some tax changes going on in 2026. How is that going to impact everybody?
Great question. And I wish there was a silver bullet answer to it, Doug. I think a lot of the tax law changes that we have seen, particularly stemming from the Big Beautiful Bill Act from last summer, when we see the impact of those, it's different for each client. And depending upon your asset composition, your income levels, and even where you live. One of the more important changes that we saw stemming from the Big Beautiful Bill Act was the SALT tax cap increasing. We also had the senior deduction coming in. Both of those sound really great, but how they impact you depends upon where your income falls. For our higher earning clients, there's not as much of an impact that's there. The good news is, some of the changes that we saw from the Big Beautiful Bill had to deal with charitable giving. there's a new opportunity for our clients that aren't itemizing taxes to capture a small benefit from charitable giving, even if they're taking the standard deduction. It's a new $1,000 or $2,000 if those clients are married benefit that'll let them take a small advantage for the charitable giving that they give during 2026. Not applicable for 2025, but does begin this year.
Okay, well, that kind of makes everything. Now, anything, Adam, as you guys look at this from the investment world, and we look at the volatility that people are experiencing, all of us are experiencing right now, even this week, and these days, does that impact any of this in your thinking? And how should our clients and prospective clients be thinking about it?
Yeah, I think we'll come back to this a couple times, but maybe let's flip to the next slide too while we're on the topic. Like Michael was saying, there's a lot of different income sources
Yeah.
that we're confronted with in retirement, and they all have different tax ramifications. That feeds into the tax strategy, into the investment decisions we make. They're joined at the hip in a sense. They have to work together. So regarding volatility, at least, I think we'll see there are different opportunities that present themselves. One from a broader tax strategy perspective, things like Roth conversions in the midst of a major downturn, especially if we're prepared for it, that can present an opportunity to convert assets while they're at suppressed prices so that the recovery takes place in a Roth IRA. Or even looking at the taxable accounts here, where you may have some stability and certainty around income from a dividend perspective. Looking at more of the capital gain or loss piece, there could be an opportunity to do things like tax loss harvesting. If, say, investments fall below their purchase price, we don't want to get out of the market, but we can sell one asset, buy something that is similar but different, keep market exposure, but gather a tax asset that can be used in the future.
Well, one of the things that I find so impressive about the two of you and then the company in general is how this thinking about the investment strategy and the tax strategy, how that comes together as you work together and how that gets integrated in a comprehensive plan. So it's the integration of it all that I think adds significant value. And that is a really important point here, because here we're talking about how incomes come in different stretches. I think that's remarkable. So when we think about taxes and risks in taxes, there's market risk, that's one thing. And then there's tax risk, that's another thing. And there's several kinds of tax risks. How should people think about that?
Great question. And Doug, it really goes back to what we were just talking about, the integrated planning. I think when you're making decisions about the portfolio by itself or about taxes by themselves and not factoring in both of those as decision points, you run the risk of making some mistakes and missing some opportunities. And one of the things that we always talk about on the tax side is how small changes over time can drive a really big advantage. That it's not frequently just one thing that you do one time that creates this tax savings effect, but it's a series of small planning steps that are mapped out very carefully in conjunction with decisions that you may make on the portfolio side. And there's a couple of different risks that we're going to talk about. There are also opportunities that these might create. One of the bigger risks, if you could go to the next slide, please, is in talking about the bracket creep and how our incomes may be going up longer term in retirement. And this really goes back to the heart of the asset withdrawal that we were just talking about, where you've got Social Security, pension income, required distributions that are beginning for clients in retirement. And as those escalate over time, it's going to move our clients into higher and higher tax brackets. Now, that's sometimes a great problem for us to have. I think when we're talking about Social Security, for example, we want to get the absolute most out of Social Security that we can. It's a fund that we have paid into for our entire careers. You want to make sure that you're maximizing that. Required distributions, on the other hand, are something that we want to try to minimize. And there's a couple of different opportunities that we'll talk about later on dealing with Roth conversions that give you the opportunity to drive down those required distributions over time. But generally speaking, we see a lot of these required distributions when combined with pension income and Social Security, maybe capital gains, pushing our clients into higher and higher tax brackets, maybe during earlier years, but certainly during the later years of retirement.
Well, and this bracket creep thing kind of leads right into the other issue, which is the Medicare thing.
Absolutely. We think about IRMA premiums in the same way that we do tax brackets, but bracket creep is more than just the tax rate that you're paying on a particular dollar. There's capital gains tax rates that are built into that. So as you move higher and higher in ordinary income brackets, your capital gains rates are going to go right up with them. So it's not just that your required distribution is getting taxed at a higher rate, but that may also be creating a higher tax rate on your investment income. All of these are compounding factors. And then, Doug, just as you mentioned, as those tax rates go up, so too do your IRMA premiums for Medicare. We don't think about one of those in isolation. Really, tax rates and IRMA should be thought of in the same manner. The problem, though, that we have with IRMA premiums is that they're a cliff. With tax rates, if you move into the next tax bracket, it's just that next dollar that is taxed at that next rate. Whereas that $1 can make all of the difference in your IRMA premiums going up by thousands of dollars in a
Right.
particular year.
Interestingly enough, I'm one of those guys who has multiple sources of income after age 62, age 65, and so on. And when I ended up taking Social Security, uh, my premium for my Medicare went up twice in the first 2 months. So I was surprised to discover that. So I'm sure other people find these little shockers that it's not just your tax bracket, it's how much you get to pay in premium.
Absolutely. And we'll talk about it in a moment, but oftentimes those low IRMA premium years are low tax years, and those are opportunities for us to take advantage of. If you can leverage that lower effective tax rate early on, create a great foundation for Roth conversions, shift some of your portfolio over that's tax deferred, subject to required distributions over into the Roth, really drive a tax advantage long term. Even
Well,
though some conversions may increase your tax bracket and your IRMA premiums near term, they help drive lower tax rates and lower IRMA premiums over the long run.
well, and it's really about the long run, as you say, and you think about that. I mean, it's about how you pay your taxes over time and the length of your life. And early on, we talk about tax avoidance. That's a good thing. Avoidance obviously is better than evasion, since evasion takes you in prison. But then avoidance isn't all there is either. It's the timing, because it's you can avoid it for a while, but picking out when to do it, how to do it, and that is where this integration of thinking comes in. And then you also, and you kind of alluded to it. Yeah, I was just going to say, legislation. There's risks that we don't know when some of these things are going to change. Is there anything changing in this year that everybody should know?
I think one of the more important ones that's changing this year is the charitable giving one that is a new opportunity for our clients beginning in 2026. The standard deduction rate, the increase in the standard deduction a couple of years ago as a result of the TCJA really moved a lot of our clients into the standard deduction that we're itemizing. And now we're starting to see a little bit of that reverse with the higher salt tax cap. But generally speaking, a lot of our clients are still taking the standard deduction at the higher rates, and they'll now be able to capture a little bit of a benefit, Doug, for the charitable giving that they do. Again, it's $1,000 or 2,000 if you're married, but not a huge advantage to that. But it's so nice to be able to get a little bit of something for the charitable giving that so many of our clients are doing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what one of the things we certainly are finding in our client base is we have generous people, and so if they can get some advantages there, they sure as heck should take those as best they can. Um, Adam, one thing, even though we don't want to talk a ton about it, anything that you would say, since it said timing, I know we're not market timers, this says legislative timing, but you do some things at a different time based on taxes than others. Is any comment that you would want to make on that?
I think we maybe go to the next slide for that. because it's not really so much about timing in a market sense, but I think it's more about preparation for different time horizons that clients have throughout their retirements. And
Good.
so,
Yeah, that's a better way to say it. Thank you.
yeah, yeah. And so I think it's kind of back to that intersection of the overall tax planning, the kind of the strategies we have in place to drive value for clients, but making sure that the investment piece, is the engine that is prepared to kind of drive those savings and those favorable outcomes. And so as part of that, we have to look at, how are we going to spend in retirement? How are we going to pay taxes on these strategies? And that kind of leads to, in a sense, of a bucketing approach, if you will, where for the near term, looking at assets like cash and bonds, particularly in taxable accounts, think savings accounts and the like, those are the near term sources of money that can be used at a moment's notice for either the near term living expenses we all expect and plan for, or even one-off sudden sort of opportunities that the market may present in a sell-off, whether that's paying a tax bill for a Roth conversion or even rebalancing into the market to take advantage of underpriced opportunities. From there, looking at where, again, is it most efficient to pull from? For many clients, especially that are, I would say, are in the earlier years of their retirement, taxable sources make a lot of sense, either because they're not able to pull from an IRA, depending on how young they are, or maybe because it's not ideal to pull from an IRA yet, given that we may be working to optimize the traditional IRA balances versus the Roth IRA balance. And from the attractiveness of a taxable account, being able to spend and pull assets out at either no gain at all in the event that maybe we're owning bonds in a taxable account, or even taking advantage of more favorable capital gains treatment from stocks in a taxable account. And so in those early years, we expect to be spending on some of those taxable assets, though we want to keep maybe a little bit more stability in those taxable accounts, because as we look at the traditional IRAs, we want to be able to strategically convert those assets, but feel certain that we have the cash on hand to pay those tax bills in those taxable accounts. And then looking even further out, Roth IRA balance is sort of the last bucket we would ever want to touch, making sure that that is a resource that can grow tax-free at a high rate. That's really where we're looking to maximize tax-free growth in our overall client's household. And so I think while each bucket has its own sort of role it's playing in a sense over different time horizons, we're still looking at the comprehensive whole from a risk perspective to make sure we're not taking on, again, too much risk as the markets shift. But we want to keep an eye over into what the overall tax strategy calls for too.
Yeah, I like this a lot, and I think this is probably very helpful for people to see this because the idea, of course, is you avoid the taxes traditional IRA avoids tax for a time. And then what we're doing here is you're controlling when you actually want to report that as an income, and you do that based on where it's coming from and and how much it's appreciated or not. I really I find that to be terrific. I mean, and it's very consistent with what we've been talking to our viewers about these last several months, which is the smart money philosophy. The whole idea is we want to position our clients such that whenever they need money for whatever the reason, there is a smart place to get it. And this whole thing on income sequencing, just related to taxes, puts another twist on that same position. So I like that a lot. And then you also though go beyond that. You think beyond sequencing. Anything else you would say in the strategies here?
I think maybe the actual conversion themselves, taking a deeper dive at that. I mean, maybe kick it back to Michael here for the next slide, just to kind of circle back on the few comments he made previously.
Yeah, that'd be great, Michael. Anything here you'd comment on?
Absolutely. And one of the key pieces that we've talked about is having, and Adam was touching on a moment ago, having the investments positioned so that our clients can take advantage of these strategies long term. I think, Doug, you would open with a comment today around the volatility that we're seeing in the market this week, and really a lot of that stemming this year from the conflict in Iran. And that doesn't say go out and maybe do a conversion, but it does for some of our clients that are comfortable assuming a little bit more risk, maybe create windows where if assets are depressed for a week or a month, create an opportunity to maybe do a conversion before the end of the year so that when we do get a recovery in those asset classes, it's occurring in the Roth account for them. But having the investment set up such that our clients can do a conversion like that is really important in ensuring the success of the strategy. I think generally speaking, though, when we're talking about conversions over the long term, Doug, most of our clients are in the bucket of having a benefit from conversions after retirement before required distributions set in. There's a lot of different terms for that. One of the ones that you frequently hear, maybe the golden years for Roth conversions, it's when our clients are utilizing taxable assets to create low tax bracket years and creating the opportunity for those Roth conversions. What that does, though, is it gives us the ability to fill those brackets up with dollars that otherwise are sitting and continuing to grow tax deferred. And the importance of that is that it reduces the overall balance of that IRA or that 401k that's subject to required distributions and shifts it over into the Roth, where from that point forward, those assets are growing tax free. But it leverages an overall lower effective tax rate. This is all about controlling the controllables. We talk a lot about that in our planning that we can't drive what the markets are going to do. I can't tell you what tax rates are going to look like or what tax law is going to look like in 20 years. What this does is allows us to convert pieces of the portfolio over today to lock in a lower effective tax rate and reduce those required distributions long term. To give you a bit of an example for what that looks like, let's just say hypothetically your required distribution pushed all of your income out. Maybe you're in the 32% tax bracket in your later years of retirement. Maybe you're 80 years young and you're starting to take some larger required distributions. You've got Social Security at that point. You've probably still got dividends coming from your brokerage account. That effective tax rate isn't 32%. Your effective tax rate, if you're in the 32% brackets, probably going to be around 25, maybe 26% overall. If we could do some conversions earlier on, even in maybe the 22% bracket, you're not paying 22% tax at an effective rate. What that's going to really do is probably create a tax effective rate of about 18%, 18% versus 26% long term, significant tax advantage. Going back to what we were talking about a little bit earlier with the IRMA premiums, what this does is it allows our clients to stay in lower IRMA brackets longer term and also keep them in lower tax brackets. One of the real important considerations, though, and it's how our planning gets really deeply involved in our clients' plans, is that conversions during those golden years generally beneficial for a lot of our clients, but conversions while our clients are working, we frequently see a benefit in doing conversions while our clients are working if they've got large tax deferred account balances. And the same thing with once required distributions set in. You lose the freedom to decide how much income you're going to recognize, at least at a minimum, due to the RMDs. But some of our clients still continue to benefit from doing conversions after they've started required distributions. So it's not just this narrow window to look at for conversions. Each one of our clients' plans is a little bit different, and we may see a benefit in starting conversions earlier or continuing them for a little bit longer.
Well, and this also relates to the importance of this just continually being addressed throughout our retirement age. I mean, we sometimes think that, well, we're done, and that's it. But no, this is never done because every couple of percentage points matters as our lives fortunately get to be longer and longer. So those extra couple points matter. I think they matter a lot. So I like that. And then as we move into the Roth and those later years, as we get older, a lot of that now we take out money and it's not taxed. It's already free. So that's
Absolutely.
a lot of good thinking. And this gets into asset location. There we go. And I was thinking about that too, as you put which money where. And I don't know, Adam, if you want to comment on that, or Michael, you want to continue on, or both of you want to throw in on this.
Yeah, I can jump in real quick. And this is something that we've shared before, and we share fairly frequently because it often is eye-opening for those who haven't seen it. But kind of in concert with that whole Roth conversion strategy, which, as the Roth grows in value via, conversions and the tax strategy itself, there are also things we can do from an investment perspective that are expected to drive value as well from that asset location piece. And a quick example of it, just boiling it down to a fairly simple mathematical exercise, shows that you can run two scenarios. In one scenario, you say, hey, let's have a client that has half of their money currently in a traditional IRA and half in a Roth IRA. And again, kind of coincidentally, they want to have 50% of their assets in stock and 50% in bonds. Using that framework and making some assumptions around stocks, let's say they're going to grow 9%, bonds, let's say they'll grow 3.5%, and let's say that they're in a federal marginal tax bracket of, say, 24%. We can run a scenario that shows in that baseline, given that the traditional and Roth IRAs are exactly the same portfolio, they both grow at 6.25% when you take that blend of the stock and bond returns. But after tax, the Roth, because it grows tax-free, keeps all of that money. The traditional IRA, growing tax deferred, takes a bit of a hit. The net effect is that 6.25% overall return is only 5.5% after tax. In the second scenario, we can be more strategic around what do we put in certain account types. Going back to trying to really show the value of a Roth IRA that grows tax-free by locating more, if not all of the growth in that Roth IRA that grows tax-free, make it 100% stock overall so that Roth IRA holds the 50% of stock that you would hold at a household level. Then you get to keep the 9% in full. All 9% stays in your pocket because of the tax-free growth. Traditional IRA, though, is structured to offset the higher risk in that Roth IRA and holds 100% of the bonds. Grows at 3.5%, takes a bit of a tax hit, leaves 2.66% in your pocket after tax. At a household level, though, that mix still grows at a 6.25% return. But after tax, you're left with 5.83% in your pocket after tax. And so between the two scenarios, they're the exact same portfolio overall from a stock versus bond perspective. The difference is by being strategic around where we take risk from a tax perspective, we see a clear path to gaining an additional edge from an after-tax return perspective.
Yeah, I think that's obviously brilliant, and I know our clients appreciate that. Our wealth advisors work with the strategies both on the tax side that you guys have from that we hear Michael and his team, and then the investment side, and all of us that you're hearing from Adam. It all comes together in the integrated approach, and we've said it before, and we'll say it a lot. When you work with the Mather Group, you get the Mather Group. You don't get just one of us, you get the whole team. And I think it's a phenomenal team. And I appreciate everybody being here. As we get to the end, or we're wrapping towards that, I want to talk about some things that matter. So let's talk about it here. Go for it. Final financial decisions that matter in this year.
I think the first component of this is absolutely, when you're talking about creating the opportunity for tax strategies in the year, it begins with having that efficient asset drawdown and being conscious of having a holistic mindset around it. So our team is working with our advisors, with Adam's team, what makes the most sense to preserve opportunities, maybe to make a donation, to preserve the opportunity for a Roth conversion or do a conversion right now with a little bit of market volatility that's taking place, and still preserve the opportunity for a conversion later on.
I like that. It's interesting. You talk about with the volatility that's taking place, that's almost within the day. We get so much that can happen. As we get to final comments, Adam, I know you always have some things that you also want. Oh, here's some key planning questions. Thank you. Cover those, Michael, real quickly.
Yeah, I think these are important topics to have in mind, not just during your lifetime, but also looking at it beyond your lifetime too. Do you have an idea of how much tax exposure at a federal, at a state level, wherever your tax authorities are located, over how much in tax you're going to be paying over your lifetime? And in particular, during your retirement. That helps drive a conversation around the benefit of Roth conversions. And then have you stress tested required minimum distribution and Medicare thresholds? This goes back to the cliffs we were talking about with IRMA premiums. That $1 over can suddenly make a few $1,000s in difference for your premiums over the next year. And then are you taking advantage of current tax law before it changes? We can never predict what tax rates or tax law is going to look like, but we certainly want to take advantage of the tax rates that we have today to lock in a long-term tax savings as a result of conversions.
We want to stay on top of this all of the time.
Absolutely.
Yep. And fortunately, we're early in the year, so we can do a number of things here. Now, as we think about key takeaways, Adam, some things you want to add to that, want to comment on here?
Yeah, I think just kind of recapping everything. I think, one of the benefits of having, like Michael and others on his team as part of our team, the planners, the wealth advisors, it really requires experts in every field to make sure this is done correctly. Things are constantly changing. We have to be able to adapt, but we also need to have a plan ahead of time because as markets are volatile, stress is arising. You don't want to be relying on gut instinct. You need to have a plan well ahead of time. And part of that plan is making sure that we're accounting for the different time horizons through our clients' lives, whether it's early retirement, mid-retirement, later, as we're thinking about more like maybe estate planning driven conversations too. And so, really it's that by planning, that allows us to be proactive when these opportunities come up.
I like it. And I appreciate all of you being here with us. I know Adam and I look forward to doing this every month. And Michael, now that you've been on, what do you think? You want to come back?
I would love to join you guys again. Thank you for having me today.
Yeah, thank you for joining us. And next month, a lot happens in a month. So we look forward to seeing you all then. And please invite your friends and family, and we'll have some fun together. Thank you. Have a great month.